Race fans, to another edition of In the Dirt. We are going to jump right into programming this evening. As everybody knows, the Carolina Crown has been shrouded in sort of a scandal with tires and tire tests and disqualifications and reinstatements maybe and whatnot. But it's definitely been a mess for promoter Cody Summer. On the telephone, we have Dave Mateer of American Racer. Mr. Mateer, how are you this evening?
I'm actually pretty good. I think we've got the situation under control, and it looks good.
Yeah. We talked offline earlier. Kind of talked tires and compounds and the testing procedures. Real quick, before we get into anything other than just tires, tell us about testing of tires and your involvement in that.
Well, we test tires a lot. I mean, we're a race tire producer, so we're on a constant improvement. I mean, in our business, if you don't make improvements, you end up getting lapped. So we don't like to be lapped. So
it's a fair statement to say that tires are constantly evolving with the materials and ingredients that are available. Is that fair to say?
Well, yes, of course. They're evolving for two separate reasons. First of all, they're evolving because we always want to make a better product. And second of all, they're evolving because the components that go into race tire compounds actually have a relatively short life on the market of supply. All of the manufacturers of the materials that go into race compounds, they've got their guys in the white coats in the laboratories that are working on making better products, which is kind of sort of the American way. And as they make better and better ingredients to put into tires, we evaluate them, and if they're indeed better all around, we tend to try to incorporate them. And, of course, the earlier you can get something incorporated into your product, the earlier in its life cycle, the longer it's going to last. Because eventually these things all get antiquated, and then you have to replace them anyway.
Now, earlier when we spoke on the telephone, you talked about the testing itself, and you were kind of involved in the evolution of that even through series with series guys, and you showed guys what you could find, and explain to us that process.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to give you a little bit of my background. I'm a chemist and a chemical engineer that happened to end up being the general manager of a race tire division. So I know a little bit about analytical chemistry and what the capabilities are. Let me step back from that and give your audience some understanding of what any rubber compound is like. There are three basic ingredients to a rubber compound. And the best way of looking at this is like, envision a sponge. And the sponge material itself is the natural and synthetic rubbers that are cross-linked that make up the rubber part of the compound. And then in the spaces inside the sponge, you have a couple of other things packed in there. One of the primary things is carbon black. Carbon black gives the compound durability and wear characteristics. And the carbon blacks will generate different amounts of heat depending on what the kind of carbon black is. So you've got the skeleton of the sponge, which is the rubber compound, the rubber material itself. You've got a filler, which is inert and immobile, which is the carbon black. And then you have items that give it grip and lubrosity, oils and resins. Resins like on the tab of Pampered diapers, there's a resin that makes the tab stick to the diaper itself. That gives the tire, resins give the tire grip to the track. And if you put the wrong kind of a resin in on the soft side, the tire will kind of stick to the track, and a lot of horsepower goes to like pulling it off of the track and making it go around the track. It's a little bit like a steamroller running over bubble paper, pop, 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 pop.
Mm-hmm.
On the other end of it, if the resin does not grip enough, it's like a drag tire on a burnout where the tire spins and power from the engine goes into spinning the tire. And you make a lot of smoke and it looks real pretty, but you don't go too far. So what you need to do is balance off the kind of additive in a resin that will give it grip, but let it break loose and let that engine push that car around the track.
All right. So establishing that, we have here we are in a situation where a driver wins a race and his tire goes off and it doesn't match the baseline. Before we get into the definition of or the intricacies of this case, tell us what a baseline is and how it may change from year to year.
All right. Well, in about 2003, I started working with some analytical laboratories to determine if we could figure out with chemical techniques, analytical techniques, if there have been additives put into a tire. Now, going back to my analogy of the compound being, the elastomer was a sponge, and then you pack it with carbon black for wear and some durability, and then you also put in these things that make it grip and give it lubrosity. Those things that give it grip and lubrosity, they're not fixed in the compound. They're kind of mobile. They can move around. So you can pull them back out, and you can analyze what those ingredients are that give it grip and lubrosity. So the technique that we developed was one that would suck this stuff out of the rubber compound and then analyze it. Now, if in the analysis, a test sample showed gives you like a fingerprint in the compound. If it showed you a different fingerprint than what the baseline compound was, and these are samples that we would supply to the laboratory so they have a baseline sample, then it would indicate that something had changed between the manufacturer of the tire and the application of the tire to the race. In this particular case, we had an ingredient in our tire that we knew was no longer going to be available after the 2011 season. So as soon as we found that out, we stocked up on enough of it to make through the 2011 season, and then we started working on how do we replace this ingredient and still keep a good compound. And we found a way to do that, and we did controlled testing, and come 2012, we swapped the ingredients around just a little bit, minor change, but these laboratories are good enough and the equipment is so sensitive that they could detect the change that we made in this ingredient in the tires. So we didn't know that the Crown race was going to have this kind of a testing. And when they sent a sample of the winner's tires off and they compared it to a baseline, they compared a sample of 2012 tire against a sample of 2011.
Which,
and they said, wait a second, there's a difference here.
Which obviously, it's not that's not gonna jive when you are comparing the two. Now, and this isn't about guilt or blame or anything. It's just clarification. So really, it was just an oversight by everybody involved. So that's what it appears to be.
Oh, I'm going to have to step up and accept kind of sort of the blame for this. I mean, I developed this technique with some laboratories to identify primarily tire softeners. And we had done it with asphalt tires. And then probably about 3, maybe 4 years ago, Richie Lewis came to me. He's a Lucas Oil Dirt Late Model Series promoter. And he said he was worried about tire softeners, and I showed him what I developed for asphalt tires, and he took the ball and ran with it. He's really good about this. And he started having samples of tires tested by laboratories to see if there was softener. And as he got more successful in determining that this tire was softened, this one wasn't, the manufacturers of tire altering chemicals, they got a little more sophisticated. They would make additives that would be carried into the tire that wouldn't show up where normal softeners would, but they would alter the characteristics of the rubber compound by altering the proportions of these other things that we put in. And then the laboratory started looking at, all right, in the baseline sample, this peak is so big and this peak is so small. And in this sample, this peak that was big is now small, and this other peak, which was small, is now big. And they'd say it was altered. And they'd usually be right. But there were some other things that would change as well. And the laboratories have now become sophisticated enough to realize when not everything has changed that should change. So last week I got a call from the laboratory that the Carolina Crown was using, and the gal there, sweet gal, nice gal, she said, we're in a quandary. We're seeing a change in a peak here, but we're not seeing these other changes that we normally see. Now, we have a secrecy agreement with the laboratories, of course, so we can talk about what the particulars are about our compound formulations. And we talked very frankly, and, I was able to say, look, that's not a difference that a racer did. That was a difference that was driven based on a change in the availability of a raw material that we formulated around. So I talked with Cody Summer today, sent him a nice little letter. In our opinion, that tire was never altered. It was as it was bought, fresh off the truck. So I'm hopeful that the racer will get his just desserts, which is a victory, which was well earned.
And if we step away from this and say to ourselves, okay, this gentleman, unaltered tire, runs from the back. I mean, we could say American Racer's got a good tire. Can't we? I would think.
Well, I would certainly hope so. We endeavor to persevere to make good product. I mean, that's what we're in this game for.
Well,
we'd like to make a good product that is competitive and is cost-effective. And if a racer has to buy a brand new set of 4 tires every time he goes out on the track with our tires, we're just not doing our job right.
That's right. Well, Mr. Mateer, I really appreciate you coming on and talking open with us about the situation. I think you'll find it'll earn. Not that you didn't have any respect in the industry, but a lot more respect from for talking with and getting this statement out there. We certainly look forward to watching American racers take checkered flags. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the your customers out there concerning American racing tires?
Sure. I'd love to say something. When we put a tire together, there are a number of different rubber compounds in the tire, and they all have to work together. My biggest concern is that chemicals that alter the rubber compounds will alter one particular compound substantially more than another, and then make them incompatible. And my biggest fear is that somebody that cleverly thinks that they're altering the performance of a tire with an additive makes that tire, the compounds in it, incompatible to the point where they're going down the front straightaway. They turn left to go through turn 1, and it puts so much stress on the tire that's been compromised that the tire fails, and they hit the wall. If I believed that this tire had been altered, I would say DQ them, bust them, because I don't want to see somebody killed because they think they're going to get an advantage by playing with the chemistry of the tires that we put together. It's just too dangerous.
Well, certainly, not only that, that's definitely a concern, but also, just the danger it is health-wise using the chemicals that alter these tires. Mr. Mateer, I appreciate you coming on with us. You clarified a lot for us. The compounds, the baseline samples are constantly changing with the ingredients that are made available, and we certainly wish you guys the best of luck moving forward.
Well, thank you much. An educated consumer is our best friend.
That's right. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, all right, guys, there you have it. That was Mr. Dave Mateer from American Racer. Let's go ahead and bring to the program Brian Gray. Mr. Gray, sorry about no intro this week. What do you think?
That's all right, Webb. Hey, I just got an education on a little bit more knowledge about tires.
I thought that interview went quite well and answered some questions. Now, our next guest is Joshua Joyner. He is the Dirt on Dirt reporter that's really covered this story from the get-go. Josh, did you get a chance to listen to the entire interview?
I listened to a pretty good bit of it. I'm not going to lie. A lot of that kind of went over my head, but I think I got the gist of it.
Now, as of such and such time today, about 10 o'clock this morning, there was no resolve to the Carolina Crown controversy. The winner's still in doubt. What does Mr. Mateer's statements do, in your opinion, to the decision-making process?
Well, honestly, I believe it makes it very difficult to not declare Autry the winner. I mean, when you look at it from his point of view, he bought a tire he thought was legal, and which it turns out it is legal, and he used it in the race just like he did everything right the way you're supposed to. It just turns out there was what it sounds like, just an honest miscommunication between the tire manufacturer and the supplier. That led to it. I can understand where Jared Landers and his Carlton or Clint Boyer would obviously be a little aggravated with the situation. They were declared the winner, and think they've got the money. And then, to have it all come back like this, I can understand where they would be, a little miffed about it. But at the same time, you could probably foresee legal ramifications coming out of it from Autry if they are continued to be, disqualified. So I really feel for Cody Summer, the promoter. Tough situation for him to be in. Just kind of got to look at all sides and find out figure out what's the best.
I've been working on, I guess you'd say, a national level for the last 4 years, and I don't believe that I've ever seen. We've had plenty of controversy over the last few years. You look at any race Bloomquist is in, there's probably something that can be said, but this race just is lingering. I mean, have you experienced anything like this in your tenure covering the sport?
I really haven't, at least not like this. These exact circumstances. We've had situations where a driver's tires were found to be illegal by test, and then come back months later. I don't think months, but weeks later. That there's something wrong with the testing or the way it was carried out or something other. Clint Byers last summer was an example of that, and I think it was a Southern All-Stars race, and turns out he was disqualified and then reinstated. Or I guess he was ever technically disqualified, but anyway, so you have seen this like this before, but never for this big of a race. Definitely for this big of a race, this is a unprecedented, and it's really the way I see it, kind of a black eye for the sport, and really for the tire testing in general. Kind of makes it for a little while it puts a dark shadow over it. Makes it like I was thinking a little bit takes the credibility away, but hopefully everyone will see what actually caused it, and see that it's it won't hurt the tire testing procedures in in the long run, because obviously that's something the sport requires to keep people from cheating their tires.
Well, I think go ahead, Brian.
That everybody seems like that gets caught. It seems like there's always. I mean, obviously, you're going to say no, we're not illegal, but at the end of the day, what I don't understand is they usually test. Now, you just tell me if I'm wrong. Do they usually take samples from like the top three? Do they just test the winner and then they hold the second and third place guys' samples?
Right. Well, actually, in most cases, from what I understand, usually you test the top three and then some random samples throughout the field. Actually, from talking with Cody, I know that he tested 8 different drivers' tires at this event. The issue here is, Scott Autry was the only driver using American Racer tires. That so that's why it came back with the illegal result. All the other Hoosier tires were cleared. I think, like you're saying, every time someone's busted, and I can tell you from covering a few of these stories, you always get the responses, oh no, I didn't do it. They're having a few examples where drivers admit to it and say, hey, I thought I had to do it to keep up, and this and that, and but now obviously that's kind of worked itself out, and anytime someone gets busted now, they're usually denying it. And I'll tell you, be honest with you, you sometimes doubt it, when you hear it, but and then anytime there's something like this comes back, a discrepancy, it just, like I said, it kind of discredits the whole process a little bit. It makes you wonder about it, and you just wonder, how the lasting effects and impacts this will have on the sport as a whole.
Right. That's where I'm kind of on the fence at that point. Is the tire manufacturers are supplying the baseline testing information for these testing labs to do the work that they need to do. If one of the because just let me play devil's advocate for a second, and this is not a knock against anybody at all, but at some point, I mean, where do you I know you can say, oh well, this guy made a mistake, but if I make a mistake, if Hoosier makes a mistake, American Racer makes a mistake, I mean, where does that put the proceedings? Is my question. Do you just draw the line at, oh well, it was just a mistake and he's the winner, or at some point is Mr. Autry going to have to say, well, maybe I should have chosen a different tire?
Well, I think in this situation, I really don't see where Scott Autry could be to blame. If his tire test, if it tests, the test results, show, which according to what, actually we've talked to the lab and obviously Mr. Mateer said, that his tires matched what came from the factory. You can't. I mean, I just don't see where you can disqualify him because he bought it and bolted it on his car. Again, I'm no lawyer, but whenever the factory and the tire manufacturer are saying it matches what we produced, I can, and if you read the initial report on Dirt on Dirt, Autry has said that him and his car owner were thinking about legal action, and I could see where there'd be grounds for that. On the other hand, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Just like I said, Landers and Clint Boyer, they've got to be miffed about it. But at the same time, and at this, with no precedent here, I don't think you can, take anything away from Scott Autry. I think that would be, an unfortunate situation. Like I said, it's all an unfortunate situation, and you really feel for Cody Summer in this situation. I don't know if you guys know his background, but it was kind of his first big race he's promoted, and he's just been affected by all kinds of, what I call the race promotion nightmares you hear about from the low car count, the weather. The race was obviously postponed and had to come back and run the feature. The track wasn't great condition either night. The preliminary nights or the feature, it was rough and tumble racetrack there. So I mean he's really had it tough, and now just to add this onto it, it's a tough situation for him to be in, definitely.
I think the only go ahead.
Tires Web.
Sorry.
Is where I've made this known to everybody. I've got this really neat Hoosier tire here. It's a 1350 model. It came from a touring team as a used part. They were throwing it out. I grabbed it up, and once I get it back to my shop, mounted up. It's a 1350. The durometer is totally different. And the really awesome part about this tire is that it is 2 inches wider than any other tire that I have purchased. Markings.
And?
Well, I mean, who'd you get it from? I guess would be the question.
I can't say who I got it from, but I'm pretty sure that it was a one-off shot from Hoosier Tire for a certain spring team. So this is where I'm saying, and a lot of people believe that these tire manufacturers make special tires for certain drivers.
Well, I wouldn't use that one if I was you.
How's that for a conspiracy theory, Webb?
And black helicopters are outside my window. So looking forward, what does this do for you and the story, your story? I mean, obviously until Cody says, well, what's Cody saying right now? I mean, obviously he's got the letter from Mr. Mateer. Cody's got to make a decision, and, you know, the ramifications are what they are at this point, aren't they?
Yeah, I think I think we've kind of found out what all the outlying factors are. Definitely what everything's going to factor into his decision and his ruling. And personally, I think he knows he's going down, headed in the direction he's going to rule. But he's got to kind of think things through. And I mean, you're talking about $20,000. You're talking about we've heard like I said, Scott Autry, whenever they first were disqualified, he talked about legal action, and I'm sure Clint Boyer, if they didn't feel like things were right and that they had been cheated out of their money, they could consider the same route. So he's kind of got to keep all sides happy, explain the whole situation, the whole proceedings, and make the ruling. And I think that's the situation right now is Clint Boyer and Jerry Landers want an explanation, and you can't blame them. I mean, you're talking difference of $10,000 in pay and the win there. So I definitely, would want some further explanation. And as far as from what I understand, they're supposed to meet tomorrow morning to discuss it. And, you're looking at in the next day or two, maybe an official ruling from Cody there.
Well, one last thing before we let you go, and this is just an idea. This is not certainly not a accusation. Does American Racer hold some of the responsibility of this mess?
Well, yeah. I mean, no knock on them, but I think they admitted it. They had a miscommunication between the manufacturer and the supplier. As far as I spoke with Mr. Mateer earlier today, and actually we're getting ready to post a story on the website that kind of explains what it is. And like he said, if anybody missed his interview just now with you guys, what he said is they made the change in their tires and they didn't inform the suppliers. And that might seem weird and sound crazy, but at the same time, like he explained it to me, was he didn't want it getting out that American Racer has all of this new compound, and then all the drivers with tires from older tires not using them and then not buying the stock from the old compound, if that makes sense.
Why don't they catalog their compounds? So when this comes to, it seems to me, you'd want your laboratories to have as many samples, and if you match one of them, then you're good. And if you don't match any of the catalog of samples, because if a tire comes off the truck and it's it's a 2010 tire.
Yeah, I think what you're dealing with now though is they didn't have that catalog of this compound catalog because it was a new compound. From what I heard someone say, that if it hadn't come out and if there's no American Racer tire tested, at this race, and this hadn't come up, it'd be whenever the American Racer tire won at a race and it was tested, this was obviously going to happen because unless it was so far along that the new sample had eventually been supplied, but that basically they didn't have it, and whoever was going to be the first American Racer tested was going to get this to come back on them. It's unfortunate it was such a big event. I mean, it'd be unfortunate for anyone to have it happen. But, when you're talking about such a big event, a huge victory for Scott Autry to be, a little bit tainted now. You hate to see that, and hate to see that for him. But hopefully from both the, American Racing Tires standpoint, hopefully everyone sees that, it was an honest mistake. And from Scott Autry, hopefully everyone understands that, as it appears, and, everyone's reporting, he didn't cheat his tires. It was, he earned the victory and as you heard Mr. Mateer say, he deserved it.
Well, Josh, we certainly appreciate you joining us here on In the Dirt. Everybody, you can catch Josh Joyner's ridings and covering of super late models across the Southeast and the country, actually. What do you guys got up next, Josh? Where are you heading next for Dirt on Dirt?
Actually, I think I have a few weeks off. Or I say off. I'm not on the road. I'll be, editing the site and posting and writing from home. But as far as actually traveling, I don't know. I know the Show Me Memorial Day weekend for sure, but maybe another stop or two between now and then. So definitely keep your browsers pointed to Dirt on Dirt, and we'll keep you updated on everything from this to all the winners around the nation. So definitely appreciate you guys for having me.
Josh, we'll probably call on you several times through the season, but you just keep breaking humongous stories.
All right, I appreciate it.
Josh Joyner, thanks, man.
Thanks.
Well, Mr. Gray, hey, Kyle May, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. It's been like the fastest 30 minutes of my life.
I know it, and it's been
my only question, Webb, is if they didn't supply the sample, and it could be an honest mistake, but at the end of the day, they didn't supply the sample. Did everybody have that tire?
Here's what I was thinking. I was thinking, why don't each when their compound changes, why is it the first thing that comes off the line not a tire that's cut up into several pieces and given to all the known labs that test? You got one race, the Ice Bowl in January, and you might got 2 or 3 other small races, but you got plenty of time to get this 2012. And I'm not indicting or trying to, point the proverbial blame finger at somebody. But my thing is if you know that, first of all, Brian and Kyle, all you race car drivers are a bunch of damn cheaters. So if they know that, they should have already had that sample to the labs. And I take that back. You're not all cheaters. I'm just saying. It's not a new regulation.
Well, it's just it's a whole. This might be one of those things that the tire companies need to look at. This may be a choice protocol that they need to add to their program, is to make sure that any time that they develop a new compound or if they change anything, they need to make sure that those labs have samples of those tires.
You would think they would already have it, though. You know what I mean? You would think they would have already done that, but they definitely need to now if they hadn't already.
Well, we should shortly have Mr. Scott Autry himself, the initial winner.
And that sucks for that dude, man. I'm telling you that. I mean, that puts him in just the most worst place he could be in.
That's right.
He wins a big race like that, and then it just sucks.
Well, all right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and play the Speedway report. I'm going to make sure that Mr. Autry, we'll give him a call, make sure he remembers that he's going to talk to us tonight, and we'll be right back on In the Dirt. Here comes the Speedway report.
In the Dirt, Speedway report. In the Dirt. In the Dirt. In the Dirt.
This is Brady Cup, the voice of Volunteer Speedway in Bulls Gap, Tennessee. The heavy rains coming through the East Tennessee region on the weekend canceled racing for Saturday night, April 21st. Our next race will be Saturday night, May 5th, as we welcome the Ultimate Late Model Series. For more information, you can visit our website at volunteerspeedway.com.
Hey, race fans, this is Mike Goins. Calling to give an update on our April 20th event at Moeller Raceway Park. It was the first of 2 fan appreciation nights on the season, and had lots of teams and drivers with some goodies for the kids to give away, and planned autograph session. Started the night off with our Chevette division, and Rusty Yarger was able to take home the win after a hard-fought race with not only Derek Davis, Miles Tarvin, and Jeff Watson, but Yarger took home the win for his first win on the season in our Chevette class. And then in our late model division, it was a hammer-down racetrack, and Barry Doss, Chad Stapleton starting on the pole, but Jason Jamison would not only sneak by those 2 guys on the first lap, but he would run away, and our feature went green to checker the whole way, no caution. Super fast racetrack, and Jason Jamison was absolutely dominant on the night to take home his second win and the first win in actually the number 12 machine this year, but Lawrenceburg, Indiana's Jason Jamison with 2 wins on the season in our late model division. Barry Doss came home second. Third place was a great battle between Chad Stapleton and Wayne Chin. Chin was able to take that position. And our 5th spot come home to our current point leader out of Richmond, Indiana, Dwayne Chamberlain, after he and Scott James had a great battle throughout most of the race. So great racing action in our Mount Over Ford late model division. In our modified division this week, once again, it was Columbus, Indiana's Kid Dasco, Devin Gilpin, winning the 4th feature of the season in our modified division. He's won them all. This time, Jeremy Brett's come home second. Some great racing all the way through the pack in the modified division once again. So at that point, Mother Nature set in, and we had to cancel our compact race for the night and delay our autograph session. So we're going to do that this Friday night. So come on out to Moeller Raceway Park on Friday the 27th. We're going to have a regular program. We're also going to do an extended autograph session with all the fans, as well as a makeup feature in our crazy compact division. So look forward to seeing everyone out at Moeller Raceway Park. Check out the website, www.MoellerRacewayPark.com. See you soon.
Okay, race fans, Adam Stewart here from Green Valley Speedway. Just giving you a rundown for our last event on April 21st. Ray Cook was the feature winner in the Super Late Model Division. Travis Crest drove his TKO to victory lane in the Sportsman. Ryan King in the Craig Late Model Division. Robert George was the feature winner in Outlaw Thunder. Robert Knight in the Pure Pony Division, and Clay Gilliland won in the Enduro feature. In the Craig Late Model feature, going to get a shout-out. Chris Snow will come from the 8th starting spot and was battling there with Ryan King for the lead, so that was one of the highlights of the night, as well as Ray Cook and Ronnie Lee Hollingsworth for the Super Late Models. So great racing in all divisions. The racetrack is in good shape. Our next event coming up is going to be May 19th. $5 general admission for grandstands that night, or $15 a carload. That will also feature 2,000 to win Super Late Models, 1,000 to win Crate, and 1,000 to win Sportsman. For more information, visit our website, greenvalleyspeedway.com.
This is Steve Curtis, raceimages.net, race report from Petaluma Speedway in Petaluma, California. Jeff Decker won the late model feature, Joe Starnetta, Spec Sprints, Richard Pappenhausen won the modified, and Mike Learn won Superstock. Raceimages.net is my photo site, and the website for the racetrack is petalumaspeedway.com.
I'd like to thank everybody that participated in our Speedway Report this week. And it's called the Speedway Report this week because Michael Rigsby of Dirt on Dirt informed me that he had an Around the Nation, and I certainly didn't want to infringe upon that. We work hand-in-hand with Dirt on Dirt, as most people know, I guess. I'd like to welcome to the program the initial winner of the Carolina Crown, Mr. Scott Autry. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Hope y'all are.
Well, I don't know if you've got to listen to the program or not, but we had the GM of American Racer talk about the different compounds of tires from 2011 and then the changes that were made into 2012. Did you get to hear the interview?
I didn't get to hear it, no, sir.
Okay, well, basically he said that any changes in compound to your tire were not made by you, but were made by the company because of the ingredients and stuff that were made available when your tire was made in 2011 and versus the 2012 sample that they tested with.
I've been finding a little bit of this out in the last week. I've been educated more in the last week and a half on tires than I have in my whole racing career.
Well, before we get to the bad part of this story, let's get to the good part. Tell us about starting in back and then just driving like hell and winning a big race like that.
Well, believe it or not, after it rained out the first weekend, I wrecked my car in the heat race I had to be in because I didn't get to qualify. I had mechanical problems when I pulled out on the track. I turned fast laps in practice, and they announced how fast I was in my practice, but that didn't get to show up on my qualifying, and we had to start at the back, and unfortunately I caught the wall coming down the front straightaway coming off turn 4 and put the right front all back into the header and had to take it over to Wolfpack, and it getting rained out helped us be able to make the race because we had a messed up race car. But we took it over to Wolfpack, they worked on it, got it back ready for us to go back. And we were initially just going to start the race, make a couple laps, pull in, take the $1,000, and be happy. Well, my father went down to the race. My car owner, he was getting a little excited because, you know, I had tore it up in the heat race. I just didn't want to take a chance in tearing it up in the race. And then Cody announced at the drivers' meeting, if y'all expect to pull in after a few laps and get starting money, think again. And I got to thinking about it. You know, my daddy promoted 8 years at the local track here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and that's something that I wouldn't wanted to see back then. Drivers just pull in to get start money and not put on a race for the fans. So that initially helped me decide to make and do the whole race. And luck was on my side because there were some cars that broke down throughout the night. My car was real good. I still moved up through the field. We got it there and we got to race Jared Landers. My hat's off to him. I got to know him over the last few years, and he's a super nice guy. But it went from being so exciting to just terrible once Cody called my car owner and told him that we were disqualified, because you can research my whole racing career and nobody's never found me to be thrown out or DQ'd for anything equipment-wise. Now, I've been barred from some racetracks for attitude, but I've never had a problem with something on my car being wrong, and it floorboarded us, and we kept begging them, leaving them message, you know, take this thing farther. I didn't know nothing about no open tires. I didn't know who to address, you know, I was scared to death. You know, that's my reputation.
That's right. Now, take us back to Victory Lane, and everybody saw the pictures on Dirt where Landers was congratulating you. Would you mind sharing with our listeners what Landers may have had to say to you in Victory Lane?
He just came over and congratulated me on a good run. You know, I was all excited, couldn't hardly talk, speechless, out of breath, out of shape. And he said he was really going to try to race me hard, but the last couple of laps, his car flubbered in the turns, and he thought he might have been running out of gas. And, you know, I hated to see that happen, because now we had started putting on a race there right before he pitted for his tires.
Oh, you guys were putting on a show for sure.
And, you know, it came down when he pitted. My crowd was thinking they would want me to pull in. I would have had to have 4 flat tires to pull in. He surrendered the lead because his right rear was going down, or had gone down by the time he turned left. I wasn't going to turn in. He was going to have to come back. That race receiver, the guy on the race receiver said they won't but 4 cars on the lead lap. He was going to have to come back and race me for it. And, you know, I knew we weren't going to tear one another up to get that checker flag, but I just could not turn left to change tires to run 5 more laps. I was going to have to run what I had. And it didn't take him long to get back to second place, and he charged by me down that back straightaway with just a few laps left. And when he shot up under me going in turn 3, I said, if he keeps this on the racetrack, he's going to impress me. And he slid it to the top of the track, and it gave me an opportunity to just turn left and race him off that turn. And I just knew we were going to race like that in 1 and 2, and maybe that was the first sign of maybe him running out of gas or something, because he never challenged me no more. But, you know, it was so exciting that night, and it's been exciting just talking about it, or somebody called me saying they'd seen the video on Dirt, but the stuff that's happened since then has been a nightmare.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, I'm definitely not the guy that's gonna make any decisions or what's Cody Summers said to you? Now, I know Cody. I worked with him on occasion, filming at dirt tracks and whatnot. Seems to be a real stand-up guy. I've never done anything to make me think otherwise. What's he said to you since the initial disqualification?
He called me up and asked me where I got my tires from. Of course, the local tire man, Spud, did not sell tires at this race. He said he just couldn't see spending that type of money to have his trailer at the track. But I told him I ordered them through Jimmy Smith, but I don't think he had them in stock. I think he shipped them from the factory, and I really didn't know, as I was telling Cody that, where my tires came from. I just got on the phone, called Jimmy, and he always makes my tire shows up, whether I'm running the Clash just 12 or 48s or what few open shows I go to. But, you know, once after I got off the phone with Cody, I called and asked my crowd where the tires come from. They said, looked like the box said they came from actually factory. I want to say it was Indiana. I'm not 100% because I've never paid the labels no attention, but he asked me to fax a receipt to him today if we had it, and my crew chief's got the receipts he has to give. We gather them up through the month and give them to my car owner once a month. And this afternoon, real late, my crew chief got home from work, and he faxed him a copy of where the actual invoice come from, and it was from the factory. That's where my tires did come from, was the factory. But, you know, I didn't know that and didn't think we needed to know that to race a race. You know, as long as you had the tires that they told you could run. But I've been educated a lot on tires lately, and if I ever outrun, you know, I've only raced the Clash in my local tracks for just about all my life. But if I do run any more open tire rules, I'll have my ducks in a row in case. I hope this don't ever happen to nobody else, because this is unbelievable.
Well, I guess we're all going to sit with bated breath and figure out, you know, if they're going to overturn it or what the decision is. All lies in Cody Summers' hands.
Well, Cody did call me Friday, and he asked me how I was doing. I said, Cody, I'm not doing too good, but you just don't know the week I've had. He said, well, we've just got the plug from American Tire. The lab just checked your tires with the plug that was certified letter sent from American Tires, if I'm saying everything correctly. And he said my tire matched their sampling identically. He said they want nothing less, nothing more. It was to a perfect match. That's what I thought he was going to tell us the first time, you know. It shouldn't be the racer's job to know what type tires or what batch the tire, or if it's an older tire or newer tire, if I'm making sense to you. You know,
yeah,
when we order tires, we ought to just be able to put the tires on and go racing.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're talking $20,000 to a man that ain't, the most he's ever raced in one is $4,000 and $5,000. Most of the time the races aren't but for $2,500 to $3,500. And when he gets the opportunity and gets lucky enough to win a race like this, that's more money than I make almost a year. Well, my public job.
You certainly deserve to enjoy that victory, and hopefully with the new information that Mr. Mateer has made available to Cody and to the lab, that it'll stand. What do you guys have in store the rest of the year? Let's say this thing works out. I mean, are you going to try to hit some bigger shows with the prize
We're talking about going over to Madison for the World Outlaw race coming up next Friday. Most of the stuff I do is for the Clash. You know, it's on they're limited on how many races they race a year. We don't have deep pockets. That sometimes it gets too expensive just try to make all those races. But we are leaning towards the World Outlaw race at Madison. And I just like to say, I understand how the second and third place guys feel right now. I hate to be the promoter right now. My father was a promoter for 8 years. I would have never imagined having to be tied up in something like this right here and trying to make everybody happy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Jared Lander is first class as far as I'm concerned, and I wouldn't want nothing for him to not have what he deserves. But I also want what Scott Autry deserves and his car owner and crew and fans.
That's right.
I just hate it for everybody. I wished it could have been easier, a victory for everybody to swallow. I hate it for the whole fans and all. I wish Cody don't let this get him down, and maybe next year will even be bigger and better if he decides to keep this thing going, because I know he's probably having all kinds of thoughts right now on what he wants to do for next year. But, you know, the people always tell me you do the right thing, good things come about. That's right. But, you know, I don't want no racers to get down and not support that. The only reason we went to that race to start with, I said, you know, the last time they had a big race at Lancaster, my crowd got mad with me because we didn't go and they didn't have enough cars to start the field. And at the spur of the moment, I said, let's go over there, fellas, and they all thought I was sick. And we got our tires. We actually got our tires the first weekend. You know, you had to be there Friday. We got our tires that Thursday afternoon to go to that first race. That's how close we cut it. Instead of paying early entry, we paid the $250 at the gate, because we weren't expecting to go to that race, and we wouldn't win if I hadn't decided, hey, fellas, you know, I ain't got many more years under this steering wheel. Let's just go and see what we can do. And we looked up, and unfortunately they want enough for Cody to have heat races, and he supported the drivers nice enough. He said, we're going to have it like it is. If anybody else shows up, they can fill in the spots or start in the rear, and I support him for that. I support him everything he's done. I don't think he tried to do nothing wrong. he was trying to be a promoter. All this, he's learned new things along with I on this incident.
That's right. Before we let you get off here, I need for you to thank all and any of your sponsors, and then give the first and last name of the crew members who thought you were sick for showing up at the Carolina Crown.
All right. I'd like to thank L&M Convenient Mart and Grill. He is car owner and major supporter with Cape Fear Racing. I'd like to thank Master Security Systems, No Hill Turf Farms, Floyd Brothers Construction, Sonny's Lawn Care, Wolfpack Racing for building such good race cars, Randy Clary Racing Engines, American Tires. You know, I was just one of a few with American Tires on there. I don't even think they expected to do a tire sample. But, you know, all them guys, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. And for my crew, Rodney Bethay, crew chief, Alan Bailey, Daniel Enos, Michael Britt. Without all those guys, Sonny Britt, without all those guys, they wouldn't be able to call me knucklehead or crazy or tell me I couldn't drive. And my wife, Rhonda Autry, for all the support she gives me.
Miss Rhonda is probably the one that deserves the most thanks, isn't she?
She really keeps this program in line. She tries to keep my support on the computer for the fans, and she is the backbone of what we do. You know, without a good wife, you couldn't go racing. I promise you that.
Well, we certainly appreciate you coming on and talking with us about the race and the subsequent controversy. Hopefully things work out in your favor. You certainly drove the race and crossed the finish line first and deserve the win. Mr. Autry, I thank you for joining us.
Thank y'all. I appreciate everything.
Not a problem. Mr.
Yes, sir.
Scott Autry, hopefully the champion of the Carolina Crown. Mr. Gray, let's go ahead and bring I want to welcome Kelly Carlton to the program as we're running out of time here. Kelly, thanks for what do you think, man?
Push to the back. I got so much to say, and I got 8 minutes to say it.
No, you got plenty of time. You take as much as you want. You actually got 37 minutes, technically. You got 37 minutes.
Cool. I want to say right off the bat here, let me say that Cody Summer is without a doubt one of the most above-board guys that I've ever met. I was actually supposed to do this race for Cody on the technical side. Some things came about, and I wasn't able to do it. But let me say that this guy, from the beginning, has had nothing but racers in mind. And I applaud him for doing what he is supposed to do. He has held his ground, did what he was supposed to do, and I continue to believe that he will do what is right and what is just. But he had to make sure all the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted, and that's the dilemma we face with this tire stuff. I mean, us promoters and series guys have been backed into a corner with this stuff. You know, about 75% of the guys want to make sure that nobody's using it, and then there's this 25% that want to do everything they can to use it and keep everybody from knowing it. And it's really putting us in a dilemma. But what I think.
Well, at the end of the day, those guys, those 25% that are really working hard to use it, it pays off.
Let me speak to that. It may pay off until they get caught, and they're going to get caught if.
So they get caught. That's a fact.
If they're somewhere that's doing the right thing and sampling like they should be. Now, I'm going to disagree a little bit with what Joshua said and kind of take you guys on a little different path here with this whole thing that's happened. What I actually believe, and some folks that I've talked to agree, is what this done for the testing is actually giving it more credit and more merit, because guess what? The laboratory found stuff that the tire company changed in their compounding. So that should tell you exactly how sensitive these testing procedures that my lab of choice, the Blue Ridge Laboratories, does. They can find the most minute thing, the most minute changes, and so I applaud those guys. They're doing the right thing. And I'm glad Dave came on and took took the blame for it, because ultimately, I guess it has to rest upon them, because their benchmark sample was wrong, and and there's no way the laboratory could have known that they changed these things. There's no way that Cody or any racing series, I have my Super Series now. We allow American racers in it, and fortunately I haven't had an American racer sample that had to go off this year. We've only had a couple of races. And so if I had, I'm in that same position that Cody's in until American racers let these guys know that. And I understand they're looking for a competitive advantage and trying to do what, everybody is trying to make their program better and doing what they're supposed to do. But I think, and I think they've certainly learned something from it. I think in the future you'll see, or you won't see it, but American Racer will be active, as will Hoosier and the other tire companies, in making sure that the laboratory do have updated samples. And I know as a series promoter, that's going to be one of the things that I'm doing pretty commonly, is making sure my laboratory has an updated sample.
Well, it should just be common. You should always have 2 years prior, and as soon as the 2013 tire comes off the assembly line with Hoosier, American Racer, whoever, that needs to be cut up and divvied out to the labs that get the most business. I mean, every lab can call and request it, but that's just got to be, because you can't have $20,000 in limbo, and somebody like Cody. I've worked with Cody. I've said before already on this program that he seems like a stand-up guy, but you can't have Cody hostage to this either, or any promoter.
Right.
That's
right. Whose fault is this? This ultimately who's. I wouldn't even say who's to blame, but where is this going to set precedent? Whatever he decides to do at the end of the day, whether Autry wins because American Racer failed to provide an adequate sample in a certain amount of time, and just like you said, he had got those tires that Thursday before the race, and they got them right from the factory.
Well, here's the thing, Brian. I think what you're asking, though, is I think the judge...
tire available to every person there at that race at that given time, is it available to them to have that tire to race against a guy that has something that wasn't available to other people?
Well, yeah, but you're talking... He said the tire was a 2011 tire, and they had a 2012 sample. So that's all it was a tire that hadn't gotten sold yet out of an inventory, or that's what I believe, because that would you...
I believe it's actually going to be vice versa. I believe that
it was a newer
2012 tire.
Oh, and a 2011 sample. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. But there's no blame here, because I think in the end, if there's no negligence, if the act wasn't negligent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is no negligence. It was just an oversight. American Racer did, like Dave said in his explanation about the chemical process, he never dreamed that the changes they made would affect it as much as it did for the laboratory to be able to pick up on it.
But now, here's a question that I wanted to ask before. What does this do for any other situations where a tire was in question and it was close to the beginning of the race season? I mean, could there, and it's already made. Could it be a possibility there's some guys out there that were innocent who were deemed guilty at other shows?
It's a possibility. I don't know. I don't recall hearing of anyone being disqualified this year. This is really the first disqualification that I remember reading or hearing about.
Last year or the year before. I mean, if the compounds change that much from a year-to-year basis, that's what my question is. If you've got a new tire and it's the beginning of the year and it's a new compound, right, and you're tested at the lab, is it possible?
Well, I can only speak to, again, I'm my new working with American Racer is new for me for this year, but obviously last year I didn't do anything. But the year before that, and the year before that, and when we actually began this testing, when we first got our feet wet and started doing this stuff, it was very incumbent upon the tire. The tire companies are one of the primary backers of series and racetracks and folks doing this testing. They don't, and Dave gave a great explanation of that. They don't want people softening up their tires, making them fail, and potentially injuring them. And obviously there's legal ramifications for all of that for them.
Of course.
And so they pushed us for this test, and they want us to do it. And one of the things that we talked about was, hey, guys, if you want us to do this testing, you have got to be an active participant. You have got to help us. We've got to have benchmark samples from you guys. If something changes, we need to know. And that was, and obviously getting a new sample there would be fine. And I know you were talking about cataloging the samples, but if the thing is, the laboratory is going to have a spectral analysis result, what the benchmark sample from 2011 looks like, that they can compare from. They don't necessarily have to keep comparing that tire sample. They have this analysis that this is what the benchmark came out to be.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily have to catalog the sample. They just have cataloged the results.
Have the paperwork on it.
Right, exactly. So that's where it's obviously just an oversight, something that happened. I hate that it's put a black eye on Cody's, this race that he really was passionate about and really worked hard for. And I really, really hate that it's put a black eye on Scott Autry, because, man, he's just one of the nicest guys that races out there today. And but again, I think Joshua said that it may have called into question or weakened the tire sampling and the chemical analysis. But I'm absolutely the opposite. I absolutely think it strengthens it. Like I said, if this laboratory has the ability to pick out the differences, the small chemical, a change in a brand of chemical or a change in a particular compound of a chemical that they use to compound their tires with, I think that speaks volumes for what we're doing with the testing. That should tell you these guys can get it down to the nth of what is in that tire. And I think that's super important. I'll tell you something, and I'm glad I have your forum to do this. I hope you will allow me with it.
Yeah, go ahead.
It kills me that these guys, these, and I call them snake oil doctors, because that's what they are. They're selling snake oil. These guys are saying that their stuff is undetectable and that beats everything. Not true. It's impossible. If you're putting something on your tire that changes the chemical makeup of your tire, which would change the compound, it is still going to be in your tire unless, A, it burned off, which must not have been helping you really good if it burned off. The part of the tire that was changed is burned off, and most of them are doing the application from the inside anyway. Or the other option is they're selling you freaking water.
Yeah, I was going to say water.
Kool-Aid or whatever, and they're getting you a couple $100 a gallon for it, and they're making a lot of money off of turning their tap on at home, So that's the biggest thing I want racers to understand, and that that stuff is detectable, and if you get sampled and you have it on your tire, it's going to be there, and you can't beat that deal. It's simple science, and if you've ever had an 8th grade science class, it's simple science. If you change the chemical makeup of something or the basic makeup of it, it's going to be, you can tell it. You can look at it through analysis and see that it's different,
And now we're set with another dilemma, Kelly and Webb, is that when they, whatever they determine, I mean, ultimately it's up to them to decide what the outcome of that race is. But if here, let's take it, Kelly. You run a series and you handle the tire testing. You are a tech guy, right?
Right.
Right. So let's say somebody rolls through 20,000 win race. You're the promoter. You're ultimately the guy. The buck stops with you, guy. And this guy purchased these tires the day before the race. Hoosier Tires shipped them right to his shop, and you test those tires, and the lab, tests them and says they're illegal, and then Hoosier calls you up a week later and says, "Oh, we didn't get the sample to the lab. His tire's fine. This is a tire, but we just didn't send the sample to the lab." I mean, where do you stand? Where are you at on that?
Well, much as Cody did, we would certainly, before we did anything else, we would request a proper sample, a sample that they deemed up to date, and then the laboratory would test that sample versus the sample from the tire that we take. I heard you mention something earlier about making special tires for drivers and things like that, and I do have some.
Something that
let me finish. I do have some theories about that.
And then I've got this tire, and it's the weirdest thing. You'd have to see it.
Well, I think I can answer that. And I've been involved. Is Hoosier does make, from time to time, they will make different tires that are test tires that they'll go and see if this is a better product, and sometimes they certainly fall into hands that they probably shouldn't, and that's true of any tire manufacturer. It's true of any tire manufacturer.
Like your hands, Brian Gray, like your hands.
Because if they aren't, just like Kay said, if they aren't testing, they're going to get lapped. They're going to get beat, and they need to be testing and trying to find new things and things that make racers better. But I will have to say that the conspiracy theory that there are drivers who get quote unquote special tires to outrun other race teams, completely ludicrous. Because a tire company again, I'm going to speak to Hoosier because that's what I'm most familiar with. A Hoosier tire company that sells, 70,000 tires a year to dirt racers, they're not going to stake 70,000 tires on one race car driver or 2 or 3 race car drivers. It's not going to happen. It's just not. It's not even in the realm of possibility for any business. You got to remember, dirt tires are just a small part of what Hoosier race tires do as well. So, I just don't think you would ever have that situation. Certainly, they do make tires that they test from time to time, and maybe maybe guys use them when they shouldn't be using them, and that's something that us tech guys need to be on the lookout for, and that kind of thing.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, is that tire, if a tire, say like that, goes through the lab, it comes back, it's illegal, are they cheating?
Absolutely. If Hoosier Hoosier doesn't have a benchmark sample for that and say that that's what all of their new 1300s are, and I, as my, I'm going to hold them accountable, just like Cody is doing with American Racer. He has to hold them accountable to ensure that they aren't, that they're being above board. And I heard Scott mention that he asked him to send him invoices. Well, Cody has to do that to ensure that that's the tire that he actually purchased. And there's going to be some serial numbers involved and things like that. I applaud Cody Summer for making sure that he is doing every single thing to try to eliminate any question of anything that he is doing here. And I think he's done a great job with it. He's caught a lot of flack, caught a lot of pressure, and he's handled it well. He hasn't become unprofessional at any point. He's kind of stayed his course, and that's what you have to do. I think that's the only way you can get by. Now, Webb, you and I talked about, and one of the things that you said you wanted kind of to ask me about was kind of about how we take our samples.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
One of the things that when we first started this procedure, I was involved in kind of the infancy of it when I was at Southern All-Stars, about how we were going to take samples and how many we needed and things like that. But one of the things that I wanted to really be proactive with and make sure that I wanted the racers to believe and to have faith that whatever I took from them that day was actually what gets tested at the laboratory. So we were really painstaking about the steps and things that we do to take our samples. And we have some random things that we do. We have some very specific tires that we take for sure. And then we have what we call a suspicious random. If we have a suspicion about one, we'll take a sample for whatever reason. But when we designate the tire, I assign, if it's after a race or before a race, and we've actually, the last few weeks here, we've actually taken some samples at qualifying while guys are sitting in the qualifying line, just to make sure. They need, there needs to be a true randomness to the sampling to try to help you with the integrity of the program. But anyway, our method was to assign an official to the race car, and he stayed with the race car the entire time. He would we'd go to the driver's trailer, have them cut the 3 samples with a grooving iron with their own grooving iron to prevent cross-contamination from one tire to another. And then, of course, we make the driver designate. It's either himself or his designation, if he has a crew member or whatever he wants. And that person takes the sample. He cuts the sample and he puts it inside of a glass container that we close up. We put a seal around that glass container, and then we get 3 samples from a tire from 3 different parts of the tire. We seal that glass container up, all those glass containers up in one bag that is a evidence bag, which has a tamper-proof seal on it. And that's one of the processes that we went through with the laboratory is when we send you a sample, part of the process of confirming or denying that tire is that when that sample arrives, that seal must be intact. And that's part of their affirmation is that, that the sample arrives with seal intact. And, I want to assure racers and make them know that we are doing everything we can to make sure they can put their trust into us and they can put their trust into this program. And I think, again, going back to it, I think this situation is a shining example of the system actually works. We just had to find the right, what was the link, what was the problem, and what happened. And it was pretty easily found.
Well, I appreciate Kelly coming on, providing us a promoter's perspective, also a tech guy's perspective. And I'm about to tell you thank you short. I got to roll. My little girl's graduating from kindergarten. I got to get out of here. But
I understand.
But I appreciate you. And when's your guys' next event with the Ultimate Series?
Ultimate next is May 5th at Volunteer Speedway in Bulls Gap, Tennessee. 5,000 to win. Before let me say one real quick thing because I know you got a lot of listeners. Chad Hale from Virginia had a race car stolen from his shop. We want to make everybody know about that. Go look on the Fast Track Facebook or web page and take a look and see if you've seen that car.
That's Chad Hale out of Virginia?
Chad Hale out of Wisville, Virginia.
All right. Well, before we go, Brian, I'm going to go ahead and I can close this out. I'd like to thank Mr. Dave Mateer for coming on. I think it shows a lot of integrity for American Racer to come on and speak publicly about the incident. I know he talked with Josh Joyner. I'd like to thank Josh Joyner, the reporter with Dirt on Dirt. I'd like to thank Mr. Scott Autry, the initial winner of the Carolina Crown. And also, of course, I'd like to thank Kelly Carlton for coming on. For Webb Dillard, Brian Gray, and Kyle May. Brian and Kyle, thank you guys for sticking around with me. We had a lot going on. Any final words? Because I'm out of here.
I'm out of here, boys.
All right. Thanks for listening to In the Dirt.